Imagine if I told you that the most successful American hero of the late 1700s wasn't a soldier, a politician, or even a man, but a foul-mouthed, treasure-hunting, cross-dressing pirate who ruled the Caribbean with an iron fist, only to be erased from the history books because she was too scandalous for Victorian sensibilities. Actually, let's look at a story that is even weirder because every single word of it is documented in the official records of the U.S. government. This is the story of the Great Camel Experiment of the American Old West, the time the U.S. Army tried to replace horses with camels, leading to a ghost story that haunted Arizona for 80 years. The Ghost of the Red Ghost, America's Forgotten Desert Experiment. In the mid-1850s, the United States had a massive problem. The nation had just acquired vast territories in the Southwest after the Mexican-American War. This land was brutal, arid, and filled with the Great American Desert. Horses were dying of thirst, mules were collapsing under the heat, and the mail was taking forever to reach California. Enter Jefferson Davis. Before he became the President of the Confederacy, he was the U.S. Secretary of War. He had a radical, almost comical idea. If it works for the pharaohs, it'll work for Texas. In 1856, the U.S. Navy ship Supply arrived in Indianola, Texas, carrying a cargo that made the locals think they were hallucinating. Off the boat stepped 33 camels, blinking at the Gulf Coast sun. They were followed by Haji Ali, a Greek-Syrian camel driver who would soon become a legend of the American West. The super soldiers of the sands. Initially, the experiment was a massive success. The camels could carry 600 to 800 pounds of gear, double what a mule could handle. They didn't need water for days, and they ate thorny greasewood bushes that horses wouldn't touch. During a test trek from Texas to California, the expedition leader, Edward Beale, wrote in his diary that he would rather have one camel than 4 of the best horses. But there was one major problem: cultural clash. American cowboys and soldiers hated the camels. Camels are notoriously grumpy. They spit, they bite, and they have a pungent smell that sent American horses and mules into a blind, stampeding panic. To the 19th century cowboy, the camel wasn't a noble beast of burden, it was a devil moose sent to ruin their day. The Civil War sabotage. Then, the Civil War broke out in 1861. The U.S. Camel Corps suddenly became a low priority. When Confederate troops seized the camel camp at Camp Verde, they didn't know what to do with them. Some camels were used to carry cotton, others were simply turned loose into the wild. When the Union took the territory back, they didn't want them either. The government auctioned some off to circuses and mines, but dozens of camels were simply abandoned in the Arizona and New Mexico deserts. And that is where the history ends, and the nightmare begins. The Ghost of the Red Ghost. By the 1880s, the camels had become a myth, but in 1883, at a remote ranch in Eagle Creek, Arizona, a woman was found trampled to death. The only evidence? Large circular footprints and tufts of reddish hair stuck to a fence. A few days later, a group of gold prospectors saw something that made them drop their shovels. They saw a massive, bright red creature galloping across the horizon, but it wasn't just a camel. Riding on its back was a human skeleton. The Red Ghost became the terror of the Southwest. For 10 years, sightings poured in. Cowboys reported being chased by a fiend from hell with a dead man strapped to its hump. One rancher fired a shot at the creature, and as it ran away, a withered human skull fell off and bounced across the desert floor. The reality? It turns out a disgruntled soldier or a lost traveler, history isn't sure who, had likely been tied to the camel as a form of punishment or a desperate attempt to stay on the animal's back while dying of thirst. The camel, unable to shake the body off, had survived for decades, while the rider turned into a skeletal passenger held on by weathered leather straps. The red ghost was finally shot by a farmer in 1893. When they examined the body, the leather straps had scarred the animal's skin so deeply they were embedded in its flesh. Why this matters today? You might think the story ends there, but the legacy of the Camel Corps is still alive. High Jolly's tomb. If you ever drive through Quartzsite, Arizona, you will see a massive stone pyramid topped with a metal camel. It is the tomb of Haji Ali, the man who tried to teach Americans how to ride. He stayed in America until his death, a beloved local figure. The feral survivors. Sightings of wild camels in the American Southwest continued well into the 40s. Some naturalists believe that the last of the original U.S. Army camels didn't die out until the mid-20th century. Modern science. Today, paleontologists find